Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning, and today we've got another new shell that I'm definitely excited to see what it can do because it's a very interesting loading that could perform very nicely, especially since it's from this particular brand and they make some great shells. But as for the shell we've got today, big thank you to Keith from Salt Creek Ammo for sending some of these over. I'm not paid or sponsored or anything to tell you guys anything about them, but they do make great shells, so I expect these to do good as well. But we've got some of these. They're new Salt Creek cold turkey blend shells, but these ones are the 20 gauge 3-inch 1¼ ounce payload of TSS 9s over lead 6s. I've been told that those lead 6s are pretty much the best and the hardest stuff you can get for lead shot, so this is definitely a very interesting load. And we have tested their 12 gauge cold turkey blend a couple times now with some pretty good looking results in last week's test, so I know these should be a pretty good performance shell, but we'll see what they do through today's setup. And as for that setup, I brought out my Stevens 301 20 gauge. It has a 26-inch barrel on it, and for a choke, I went with the Carlson's Longbeard XR 568 constriction turkey choke. Keith did say that those shells patterned well through his Pattern Master 565, which I will be having one of those on the way here shortly for us to test, but this 568 should give us a pretty similar pattern, so we'll see how they do through this combination. And I do think I forgot to mention a second ago, I don't think the 20 gauge blend shells are on their website, at least not at the moment of filming this. I'm sure they will be on there soon. The 12 gauge ones are. I believe the 12 gauge ones are 27 bucks a box or so, and I imagine these will probably be somewhere about the same. So they do split the price between a lead shell and a TSS shell pretty nicely right there. And they are a blend load, so kind of splits both performance and price right down the middle. So if you're interested in some of those shells, keep an eye out on their website because I'm sure it'll be on there sooner or later. But as for today's test, everything is the same as usual. The turkey target is set up at 40 yards, and I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity from the shells. So let's get you guys a view of that target and see what these new 20 gauge cold turkey blend shells can do through the 301 and the Carlson's Longbeard 568 choke. Alright, so that shell gave us 1134 through the chrono. The boss claim is 1200, but compared to what we've been seeing from the 12 gauge blend shells, this is very much normal, is low 1100 range, and that's a perfectly fine velocity for these shells overall, so nothing I'm concerned with up here as far as velocity goes. But what kind of a pattern did they give us down there at 40? Let's go check it out and see what we got. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. And it's rather unfortunate that we were just a touch high and left there. Quite honest with you, it was probably me, but I really don't know why we patterned up that high and left, because that shotgun typically hits pretty much right on the money. Either way, that's why we use the backers so we can see our pattern, and what we have here is a pretty nice looking core area up here, without a doubt. It might not be screaming tight like a straight up TSS load is, but it's a nice even core area right in this central 10 inches or so. And it's a good mixture of both TSS and lead pellets within there as well. I know you can't really tell that on camera, but here in person, it is a pretty even mixture. So for our core area, not bad at all. Now around the outside edges, we definitely start to open it up just a little bit, and we do pick up a few flyers down here at the bottom and stuff, which isn't too surprising for a shell like this. Every time we test a blend shell or a stacked shell or something, that's typically what we do see is a couple of flyers. But I'll have to do a little bit of editing here for you guys just to show you actually how good the pattern is. I will draw the equivalent of a 10-inch circle on the actual screen here so you guys can see what that core looks like as if it were centered up, because we're really not missing a ton of our pattern off the top of that paper at all. Everything is right there within a nice centralized spread except for those flyers. So definitely a very usable pattern if we had that centered up, without a doubt. I wouldn't hesitate to turkey hunt with that, but I do think we can still fine tune it a little bit as well, especially these outer edges. I'm not as concerned about the flyers because we will most likely always have a few, but mainly this stuff like over here in the top right corner, if we can just have that tightened up a little bit with the rest of the core there, then we'd really be on to something. And for a shell that kind of floats the line right between a lead and a TSS shell, this pretty much does that in performance too, it would seem. 20 gauge and lead is very limited in my experience with the kind of pattern capability you're going to get, but this one is definitely not quite as tight as a TSS shell would be either, but it's a very solid and very usable pattern. And if we try this through a couple other chokes, I think we can get a little better than that out of it as well. Maybe they'll like a little more constriction, maybe they'll like a little less, but like I mentioned earlier, I do have a pattern master code black on the way as well, and if Keith said these do great through that, I believe him, especially based on what we saw last week in the 12 gauge cold turkey blend shells. Either way, a little disappointed that we were high and left on this one. I'd much rather have it centered up, but very solid pattern all day long, but we can still refine it just a little bit around the edges. And here's the wad from that shell, and right off the bat it does have these little ribs on the side, which remind me a lot of some of those low bore contact wads. I forget exactly who makes them, but if that is what it actually is, which it kind of looks like that, then we know these are some fantastic performing wads, and I definitely think this one did the job. We don't have anything stuck down in there, it didn't snag weirdly on anything, and it overall looks very much normal, nothing out of the ordinary. And I expect that we can definitely get these to tune in just a little bit better with this wad. It shouldn't be very hard to find what combination this shell actually really likes. So nothing really to note here as far as the wad is concerned. Alright y'all, well, what do you think about that performance right there? It's unfortunate that we were just a touch high like that, but that's why we used the backer so we can actually see our pattern, because I really don't think we're missing very much except a couple of flyers or something off the top there. Either way, that's a pretty solid pattern. That central 10 inches or so is plenty good enough for a 40-yard turkey pattern all day long. It's not quite as tight or hot as a straight up TSS load, but it's far better than anything we've seen as far as lead loads are concerned when it comes to 20 gauge. And considering these are a blend of both TSS and lead, and they pretty much split the middle in performance and price, that's pretty solid all day long. Now, I definitely think we can refine the very edges of that pattern a little bit, and we might be able to do that in that Pattern Master Code Black Turkey that Keith said they performed well in, which is a little bit more constriction than this 568 Longbeard choke that we tried today. So maybe they like a little more constriction. We're just going to have to try them through a few different chokes and see what happens. Either way, definitely a very solid starting point, but I guess leave all your thoughts in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any kind of blend shells like this? Or is that a shell or a pattern that you would be interested in hunting with? And what other choke combos do you want to see these shells run through? A little tighter, a little more open, whatever the case might be, leave all your thoughts down in the comments. At the end of the day here, like I've already said, very solid starting point that we can work off of, and ultimately, that's a plenty good enough 40-yard turkey pattern right there that I wouldn't be scared to hunt with, but I do still think we can refine it a little bit as well. So with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.